Oh, it's a wonderful Sunday. Let's start, okay? Would it be perfect? If everyone is ready. So this is our agenda. It's for cost accounting for financial management, and we have 50 minutes. Today we will learn the terminology, main setups related to manage allocations, pros and cons, and reporting. But for this one, we will only focus on the FO integrations. So at the end, our aim is that you will be able to fly with your own wings. While we have limited time, because training takes 8 hours, I will try to do the best to give you as much as I can. But if you need more details, we can set up a training session or ask questions via Dynamics community. So don't worry. While it's easier than it seems when you have your hands on. So are you ready for the roller coaster? Before we start, I would like to tell about myself. I am Bilur Şamlancıoğlu. I'm MCT and Dynamics Finance Solution Architect. I have been in Dynamics 365 FNO MCP since 2004. I have been around since 3.0 version, and yes, I'm old, or let's say wise and experienced. So have more than 40 plus project experience, very passionate on Dynamics 365 FNO. I'm not technical. While I need technical support, this is why I married at FNO technical architect. So this is my warm-up joke. You may find the link of the documentations in the end. So it's very detailed and good one to read. So let's start while we have too much to learn. Here, the resources that I will use, my expertise for sure, and the Microsoft documentation link, which is 116 pages. And you can use Microsoft Learn always for this purpose, and it has really good documentation. Why to use cost accounting module? Let's start with that. Why do we need it? So cost accounting is not cost management. Sometimes it can be understood as they are together, but it's not a cost management. There is nothing to do with the items, item costings, productions, and etc. It's a module in FNO, but can use various sources. So you don't have to use FNO transactions to use this module. But we will focus on the FNO integration right now. This module helps you analyze and evaluate your data. The cost accounting concept is that if you need to allocate cost for reporting purposes and you don't require any GL transactions accordingly, you can use cost accounting module. But if you want to post transactions direct to your general ledgers, you can go with your allocations in the FNO. Or if you need versioning for reporting, if you need to have different allocation rules with the same data, you can use the cost accounting module. Or if you want to report both cost and budget allocations in one place, also you can use this module. What you can manage in cost accounting is that you can allocate costs from a cost center to the other cost centers, or employee costs to other cost centers, cost center costs to products, cost center costs to projects, or employee costs to cost center than the products, however you want to design. So what you have to do is that to decide which dimensions to be used in the system. As you can see, we have the tree view here. So in this various example, we are allocating costs from cost centers to product groups, but you can have just one level, or you can have 2 level, 3 levels, 4 levels, up to, I believe it's 10. I have only used 2 or 3 level allocation so far. So it supports the multi-level allocations. Before we go into the screens and into the details, you have to learn about the terminology. Terminology is very important because it's a little bit different that we get used in FNO. So it takes my time to understand the terminology. So we have cost accounting ledger. Cost accounting ledger is used for versioning. Versioning helps you to create different variations of the allocations with the same data. If you have different rules, you can apply in cost accounting ledgers. We have cost entry. Cost entry means the transfer data from the FNO. So when you upload your voucher transactions and etc. into this module, it's called the cost entry. We have allocation bases. Allocation bases are measures like kilowatt hours, square footage, and etc., which you can use, or the headcounts, for example. And we have cost objects. When you hear in the module the object, it means dimensions. So this is very critical because we will use the object very much in the latest presentation slides. We have cost elements, and if you hear somewhere in the system element, it means the GL account. So this is also good to know. We have also primary and secondary cost elements. Primary cost element is your GL accounts, and secondary are like GL accounts, but you can set up manually. You cannot set up a primary cost element because that system just lets you to use the secondaries for that purpose. GL accounts are automated into your module according to your setup, of course. Where to start? Now we can go over the 365 screens. So you go on to cost accounting, and then you have to create your own cost accounting ledger. On cost accounting ledger, you can select your cost element, chart of account, basically. Your fiscal calendar, you don't have to use the fiscal calendar that you use for in FNO. For example, if you want to use this module in 3 months period, you can select a different one. You have accounting currency on that one. Even though your transactions are different than your accounting currency, you can select whatever accounting currency that you want to use in here. For example, if you have in one company USD an accounting currency and another in euros, another in Swiss franc, it doesn't matter. You can set up one accounting currency in here. So with the exchange rate type, selecting on your ledger, system will change them accordingly. Sorry. Cost accounting ledger can be set up manually, or you can use the wizard. So what I use in my implementations is to use the wizard first and do the other setups manually from the ledger. Ledger is very important because this is how we design our main definitions. When we have the cost accounting ledger, we can manage almost everything from the cost accounting ledger administration. You see there are too many buttons on that one, but the cost accounting ledger administrations shows you your cost center details, your dimension details, your statistical measures, and your cost elements, which are GL accounts, and the processes that you manage. And you can set up directly on here, and you can process your allocations from the cost accounting ledger administration. Okay, so here, as you can see, you can have your versioning. Here there are 3 versions: cross-legal entities, cross-legal entity market, and USP2. So here, by the versioning, you can have more than one versions per, for example, your company. So if you would like to run separately all your companies, you can have each one version. And if you want to do versioning for different version information for your company, you can also create your versions like USP to version 1. So this is very good place to manage your different type of reportings and see what happens if you change your allocation rules. On the cost units, you define your cost control unit. Cost control unit helps you hierarchy for your cost flow. Here, as I mentioned before, we have a tree view which shows us the cost center control, then the product group. This means that cost center control dimension will be allocated to the product groups. Then you start uploading the cost elements and cost objects, which is your chart of account and your dimensions. Okay, and then you create hierarchies between them to use for reporting purposes or to define your data. Here you see the defined cost element. We have 3 in here, but for a version you can have just one version, which here as a data provider I have selected Dimension 365 Finance and Operations, but you can manage with 2009 and some other sources, but this main course will be an FNO, so we will go with the FNO. After you go with your cost element definition, you have to do the configure data provider. Data provider shows you from which chart of account you would like to use, and you can give the filters like profit and loss, expense, and revenue. They are defaulted, but you can give from and to account, and if you, for example, would not like to see the revenue accounts in your versioning, you can remove it directly. So after that, you import your dimension members and see the details of what has been imported from the view dimension members. You see this is the chart of accounts, and you can see as the type primary and secondary. Primary, you cannot add it. This comes from import operations, but you can add some secondary elements in here, which I will show you in later how we are going to use these secondary elements and the purpose. Honestly speaking, it's very important to use the secondary elements. Then you define your cost objects, which are your dimensions. The same, here we have 2 cost objects, cost centers and product groups. And as we did for cost elements, we have to configure the data provider. In the configure data provider, you need to select the dimension name in 365, which you would like to match with. And after you select your dimension, you go for import. After you import your data, you will be seeing from the view dimension members. You don't have to do this repeatedly. You don't have to do this setup repeatedly. So it's just one time setup. But the thing is that if you have any new account, any new GL account, or any dimension to be added into the system, you have to run the import process before you continue. So after the setups, all you have to do is, and to be sure, honestly, I always run this import process every time. And we have statistical measures. You have to define your statistical measures. You can have just one, and then you go and define the elements for that one. Here in the elements, our statistical measure elements, we have in here, for example, electricity, FTEs, which are full-time employees. You can have full-time employees without the contractors. You can have office area, production area, or some data from the system like production hours and etc. So we define here which statistical measures that we are going to use. In later stages, what I will show you is that how to map the statistical measures with the statistics of the system. When we come to the statistics, there are two options that you can use. You can use the statistics of 365 F&O, like production hours, sales quantities, and etc. Or you can upload your statistics of your own if you can use both of them. For example, if you would like to have the square footage, you can directly upload that statistics and use that in the system. Here is our statistics. We have all employees, FTEs, square meters, and etc. as you can see. Here you can select the data provider. For example, in this example, we say that we are going to have the all employees, and we will have the data provider as 365 F&O. And we did not do any criteria. We didn't have any criteria in here. And here, this is which I selected as a configure data provider. You can have these providers set up in here. As you can see, we have all employees that will have a function of count from the table SCM employment. But if I would like to only take the employees, not the contractors, as you can see, we are having the count again, and we will having the table SCM employment table, but give the range just the worker type for the employees. Also, rather than the SCM table, we can use, for example, prod root runs, and using the sum information from the prod root runs. Summing field will be the hours and date field will be the physical date. And we will only give the range that the operation of reconstructions to be uploaded from the system. Also, as we said, we can use these that will come from the F&O, but we can also upload our statistics using the DMF. So this is the only place that we can use DMF to upload data. Others need to be set manually. To import our statistics, we have import source identifier. Here we select as electricity consumption, production square meters, office square meters, and for example, IT allocation key, which are very different. We have the accounting date. This is very important. This is mostly set up in the end of the month for us to be allocate the data accordingly. And we have magnitudes, allocation values, and we have the dimension member name 1. We have more than one, but honestly speaking, I just use one of them, the first, the member 1. So here you can see the cost centers. So you will here know by defining your statistics how it will be allocated and what will be your key while allocating a cost to the cost centers. And we have dimension hierarchies. Dimension hierarchies are very crucial during the setup because we will be using in 2 places. The first one is to set up our allocations, allocation rules, and the other is for reporting. So you have to be very precise on how to set up your dimension hierarchies. Here, there are various hierarchies that we are going to use. The first one is for cost elements, which is for our chart of account. And the other is for our cost elements, which are for cost centers. In here, it's named as organization. As you can see, first we have the CEO, and under them there is COO, CFO, and CIO. And for COO, we have reconstruction, pasture, fill and pack, and etc. So when you want to report that, what you will do is that you will see those trees on your reportings. Also, when you define that system to know what it is, of course, you do the mappings. You can give from dimension member to the two-dimension member for system to know, and this is being only defined in the last level. So it will sum up to the upper level on your tree. Here, there is an example for GL accounts. We have the total cost, we have employee cost, and under employee cost, like cost, direct personnel, indirect personnel, and etc. So as we do it for the cost objects, which are our dimensions, we can do it for your cost elements, which are our GL accounts. And then you have to define the policies. There are 5 policies that you can use. There is distribution policies, allocation policies, roll-up policies, cost behavior policies, and overhead rate policies. So the correct question to ask to your customers, how would you like to allocate? Which detail you would like to see? So to define policies, also as mentioned before, you can use the hierarchy. So you don't have to set up for each cost center, each product, each employee one by one, but you can group them and define the policies. So for policy order, how system reacts is that first goes with the behavior, then the distribution, then the overhead calculation, and the allocation. You don't have to use each of them, just use what allocation rule you need to use in the system. For example, for cost behavior policies, if you do not like to define your costs as fixed, variable, semi-variable, don't use it. If you don't need to use the overheads, don't use it. So you can use every one, all of them, or just 1, 2, or 3 of them. It depends on you. Here where we define the policies, as you can see, there are 5 of them. To classify costs, you can classify your costs as fixed, variable, and semi-variable. On the behavior policies here, you can select your cost element dimension hierarchy, your cost object hierarchy, and can give a fixed percentage or fixed amount for that. And we have allocation and distribution rules. Even though they sound the same, there are slight differences in between them. Allocation, the system automatically determines the order to perform the allocations in and iterate over it. The allocation order is controlled by the cost control unit, which means that, for example, first the cost center is allocated and then the product in this example. And it supports the reciprocal allocation method. Distribution is doing the distribute cost from one cost object to one or more other cost objects, but it's not reciprocal. So this is very important to know. On cost distribution policies, we still have our cost object dimension hierarchy, and we have cost element dimension hierarchy. We can set up the rules according to your cost behaviors if you use it. If you don't use it, so it will be just null. And then you have your allocations basis. This means that 094 for the account 602170, which has the behavior of the fixed cost, will be allocated with the rule FTEs. But the 094 cost object, which is a cost center, for account 606300, which has the cost behavior of fixed cost, will be allocated according to the all employees. So you can give different rules to your different allocations. Here, as you can see, we have, it's writing there, the cost object dimension hierarchy and cost element dimension hierarchy. This means that you can define, for example, in this example, one by one, or you can select the top group on your hierarchies. In cost allocation policies, the same applies, almost the same, but here you have cost object dimension hierarchy, cost behavior, and your allocation base. As you can see, hierarchy is being used. CIO is not our real cost center, but it is one of the top groups that we can have our reportings and allocations to. As you can see, you can drop down and select from the tree view that you can use. And we have overhead policies. Overhead rate is used to change one or more specific cost objects. The charge is based on a predetermined cost rate and the magnitude from the assigned allocation base. Here you select the rate, the units, cost elements, cost objects, behavior, and the validation. If you would like to retire a policy, you can always retire a policy. You will see in the retired ones, and you can create a new policy if, for example, that month you want to allocate with a different rule. And we have roll-up policies. Here, as you can see, we have roll-up policies per cost object dimensions, cost element dimensions, and we select the secondary cost element. This is for reporting purposes. If you don't use the roll-up policies and you don't use the secondary cost elements, it would be a problem, because in the end, when you would like to report your original amounts, what has been allocated to where, you will not be able to do that, because after the allocation, the balance of the original will be 0. So how system reacts is that first you allocate your cost from the original to the secondary, and from secondary to the aiming object, which dimension that is, and then in reporting purposes, you will be able to see the original balances and what has been allocated to. And we have to set up our allocation bases. Normally there is 3 of them, but one of them has just showing what you have set up in the system. So I will go for the hierarchy allocation basis and formula allocation basis. If you don't require this setup, you don't have to set these up also as well. Here in the allocation basis, predefined dimension member will just show you what you have set up in our previous slides. But hierarchy allocation basis is also a bit important for us if you would like to limit the range of the original predefined dimension member allocation basis. So here you can give a name, a description, allocation base, and if you would like to only allocate the organization from the CFO, CIO, COO, you can give that allocation basis per hierarchy in here. Or else system will allocate all of that information. We have formula allocation basis. It lets you define advanced formulas, and you can use symbols in the formulas. Also, you can see what it's going to calculate by to use the preview function. We cannot use if statements in here, but we can manage that by using the symbols into the system. Here, as you can see, we have the formula. A is bigger than B, then this and that. Okay, and what is A, B, C, if you would like to say, it's the aliases. So under the base factors, you can have your alias. You can have alias as a constant and define as the allocation base. For example, in this example, A bigger than B means that if allocation base electricity values are bigger than B, which is a constant of 10,000, then continue to process like that. This is very good documented in Microsoft documentation with examples. Okay, so if all is well till now, we have gone over all the setups. Now you can start for your processes. To manage the process, what you have to do is that manage data sources, then source data processing you have to use to collect data, and then you go for the periodic calculations. Manage data source setup is just one-time setup. Where you go is that to upload data, you can upload for your actual versions, which has GL transactions, or your budget data. If you use the tab actual versions, this means just for your GL data, and budget versions, then it will upload your budget data according to your setup. To manage data sources, we have two. We have statistical measures and general ledger. For general ledger, what you do is that you configure your data provider. Here we are going to use Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, and then select the criteria that we would like to give, like legal entity, which legal entity that we are going to use, or which posting layer that we would like to use. It only takes the operating data. Okay, you cannot change the operating data. Only operating period type will come to your 365. And then for budget, you do the same. All you have to do is that go into and select budget, and then you can map the budget you would like to see in your reporting purposes. Here we selected the budget model, budget type, and budget entry type. So after we do that, we start uploading the data like voucher transactions, budget transactions. So this is why we go to source data processing. We go to the source data processing. Under process data source, we run general ledger. And then system will upload according to the selection which month that I would like to use. All the transactions. When you upload the data, you will be able to see as kind of a journals, and from the journal entries you can see the details. As you can see, it's uploaded monthly. If you for example, if you run the allocation and see that or learn that there are some transactional data that still needs to be uploaded on your cost accounting module, for this purpose you have to run this process again. Do not do any other setups. Just run the process once more. It will just create another journal with the delta data. But for statistics, a little bit different. For the statistics, as you can see that statistics have been uploaded from the system. Again, and from the journal entries, you will see the details of your statistics uploaded for this version. But if you run the statistics again, it doesn't take the delta data. It reverses the previous journal and create a new one. So this means there will be a lot of data. So I would advise you to run the allocations first on your test environment, and if everything is okay, then run it in production. Because in the end, you will see, at least in the first times that you try to set up, there will be too many data that will be uploaded into your system. And here, as reverse journal column, you will be able to see which journal has been reversed or not. Here, as you can see, we have very different statistics like CEO cost center, CFO cost center, COO cost center, sales quantity, reconstruction values, and etc. Each statistics will have just one line in here. After you do that, after you upload the data about your transactions or budget transactions, you run overhead calculation. You can run overhead calculation more than once. It's okay. And when you run overhead calculation, you will be able to see what the calculation has been run. For example, in this example, it has still journals. You can see the journal entries. You will be the journal type. If you define all the allocation rules, as you can see in here, each will have its original journal type like cost distribution journal, allocation journal, behavior journal, and etc. And you will have the cost control units that you define at the first time of the system. Here, there is cost center control and product group control units. So when we go for the key points are, you can create cost accounting ledger for each version, but do not multiply, duplicate your cost elements or cost objects, chart account definitions or dimension definitions, if you can share information applicable. If you have the same rules, just a couple of them are changing, you are not required to create a new cost element definition or cost object definition. So you can use the same in each version. Also the same, do not multiply, duplicate allocation rules if each cost accounting ledger has the same rules. For example, if you decide to create version for each company, but each company has the same rules, do not create new rules for each company and use the same. So this will help you very much because these are mostly manual definitions. You can create different allocation rules just in case versioning is needed. Let's go for the reporting. For reporting, you have 4 options. You have cost control workspace, mobile workspace, export, exile, and pivot, which I like to use, honestly speaking, and Power BI content. In this session, we will not discuss in detail of mobile workspace and Power BI content. For Power BI, you need to activate the related content, and mobile workspace use the template that you set up for cost control workspace. So let's check with the cost control workspace setup. You may have different cost control workspaces to use for reporting purposes. And here you can define which data to see by selecting and assigning the calculations. And also you can decide on your columns, which columns you would like to see. If you would like to see the current period, same for the budget, previous period or year to date, and etc. You can here select each as columns. If you would like to see, for example, the fixed cost, indirect cost, fixed and variable costs, or total costs in different columns, you can select it. Also applies for the budgeting. After you made these definitions, you have cost control workspaces. In the cost control workspaces, you will be able to see your hierarchy. This is why the second time it's very important how to define the hierarchy. You will be seeing this information. This form is almost the same in the mobile application. So it uses the same background. Excel reporting, which I like. Of course, it has pros and cons. You have to go to cost control units. Under cost objects, you will be able to see cost control units, which you define the hierarchy between the allocation, as you may remember. We have, for example, we can see the cost center and cost entries and details, but all you have to do is to go to view and use export data, open entries in Excel. After you go here, it asks you which hierarchy to be used, but it's mostly defaulted. And then it will, as standard version of FNO, creates and opens your Excel. Here from the design, you can remove the columns that you do not use. And then you can do your pivots. And during your pivots, and in the pivot fields, as you can see, there are your hierarchies. While we have defined our hierarchies, and we have just 2 or 3 of them defined, you don't, as you can see in here, maybe there are 10 hierarchies that you can define for your cost elements, which are your chart of accounts, and 10 for cost objects, which are your dimensions, but you can just use less, but not more than 10. Here you will be able to see the details according to your hierarchy. Here we can see the CEO's cost center, and after that 013 as sub-cost center, and then your element hierarchy like expenses, under them business travel, and the accounts. You can group as much as you can and you would like to see in your Excel reporting. Let's come to pros and cons, and this is what I think, according to my expertise. For pros, it's good that it treats independently. So there is no effect on GL transactions, and do wherever you would like to. And you can do versioning. This is very important for a management team to decide what to do. And you need to decide you do not need to decide at the time of the transaction. So you can post everything and you can do your rules at the end of the month. So it's fine. It has currency conversion, so you can report according to the currency you want to see. You can set up dimension structures separately, even though if one account has, for example, more than 3-4 dimensions, for example, product, cost center, employee, license plate, and etc. It doesn't matter. If your versioning needs just 2 of them, like product and the cost center, in this module, you can just use 2 of them. You don't have to use all of the dimensions for reporting purposes if they are not relevant. And most operations are automated. So this is the pros that I can name. For the cons that it's very limited in Excel export for reporting. When there's too many data, it cannot export data to Excel. So I would offer to use Power BI for this purpose. It has data redundancy. You need to decide how to set up accounts, dimensions, account structures from the beginning of the project. Because, for example, if you would like to allocate a cost from a lower level to the upper level, that dimension should be blank when you post that transaction. For example, if you want to post a cost to the employee and that employee works on 3 different cost centers and you would like to allocate it, that cost center dimension must be blank. So system should allow it to be blank when you post it, or else system thinks that, okay, this employee has already cost center, so I cannot allocate it. Okay. You cannot delete a version when you run the transactions. This is why I offer you to do in tests. So if you want to get rid of it, you can directly get rid of that version. You need to process again when a new account, dimension, or transaction occurs, which is very normal because it's a different module. Uploaded statistics cannot be deleted, so you have to upload the reverse sign, so the balance will be 0 and upload it again. If you upload a statistics that you are never going to be used, they will stay there always. And only on DMF, one thing that you can upload, which is the statistical measures. So this was the end. I know it's very quick, but stay inspired and never stop to improve. So thank you to our moderators for managing all the processes. Thank you all for joining the session. If you do not have enough time for all the questions, you can reach me via Dynamics community. Also, whom requires this presentation, I can share this PowerPoint via LinkedIn if you reach me. For more detailed session, we can arrange a training session if you reach me via LinkedIn. So, light be always with you and wish you good luck with your implementations. You can find my connection information in here, and also I would like to go with your questions if you have any.
Yeah. Thank you, Bulu.
Thank you, Bulu.
It was a nice session.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as of now, I don't see any questions. Looks like people are still digesting the topic. It was a really excellent session, and I can see your energy in this. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah. So.